everybody, it's Ophelia with another Mixed Media Monday. Thank you guys so much for joining in. Today we're going to do a little bit of prep work, and I want to show you guys how I prep my pages to begin. There's a couple of times where I prep my pages and a couple of times when I don't. So I want you to think about it this way. If I am doing a lot of work, like a lot of heavy water applications or a lot of paint, I will prep my pages. If I'm just doing like some watercolor or my grocery list or something like that, then I don't. If you watch through to the end, I'll show you the differences when, a finished piece where I prep my page and a finished piece when I don't. So just stick around to watch that one. But let me just show you guys how I prep my pages to handle all of the stuff that I actually put on. The first thing, the supplies that we're going to use today are the Carriker Mixed Media Adhesive, as well as the Jerry's Gesso that's going to prep or finish our prep, I should say. And then let's just reach through and get these. A variety of papers from dictionaries, sheet music, you name it, papers. What I don't want is for you to find things that are very precious, because these will be covered up with paint and such like that. So just dictionary pages, any bits and bobs that you find lying around, those will be great. My thought is anything that's paper is fair game to be glued down. So what I do is just kind of take my dictionary pages and just start ripping things. It actually provides great therapy, but just rip them up, small pieces, large pieces if you want. I just find that for me, with my therapy, it helps to just kind of rip them into small pieces. So that's what I do. I don't ever pay attention as to whether it's upside down or anything like that. I'm going to take some of my adhesive, put myself a small layer down here, and just put my piece of paper there. And then I always take some more adhesive and go over the top, because what I don't want is for these little edges to come up later. So I always just like to put some on the bottom as well as on the top. My favorite brush is the Polar Flow. I like that I can get really aggressive with it and it doesn't really like shatter my brush or my bristles or anything like that, to make the paper lie down flat. If the crinkles bother you, which it doesn't bother me because I love the not only the visual texture but the actual texture in it, that doesn't bother me at all. If it bothers you with the crinkles and such like that, you can totally use like an old credit card and kind of squeegee it down. But for me, I just kind of like the feel of it, and I totally like that whatever's going on in the background, people will kind of look at your work, and at first they're like, oh, well, look at that, and then they go like, oh, there's such and such in the back. So I just kind of like to have different elements or variety, I guess, with things kind of showing through. So cover this as much as you want. For me, it just makes my page feel hefty so that I know it's going to take a whole lot of whatever I do. Sometimes I use a ton of water. Sometimes I use a whole lot of acrylic paint. And it just makes my page feel a bit more hefty. So I'm going to continue working to cover this up, and we'll be done here in just a second. And the next thing that I'm going to do is put a thin layer of gesso. And I like to use gesso, yes, to help like bring everything back to a level playing field, but also it kind of like allows my paint to then float over the surface and not actually sink into the paper. I just like to use a very, very thin layer so that I don't actually like obliterate what's going on underneath. And sometimes I'll just get my brush a tiny bit damp and just put a thin layer of gesso over the entire thing. And this page is prepped and ready. Now what's important here is that you let this completely dry before you move on to other applications. But this is how I prep my pages. once I put that gesso on, because for instance, if I do something, let's say, I don't know, this, and I don't want it to bleed through to this page, gesso helps to make things that are here not actually bleed through to here. So I like to prep everything with gesso. You can also notice that my thin layer helps to, I can still see what's going on, but it's still prepped and I have a nice coat. That is all I do to prep my pages, and with this, it is now ready to take anything, the, layer upon layer upon layer of paints or inks or any supplies that you use, it's now ready. Let me show you some instances where maybe I won't prep my pages, and that kind of helps you see the difference. So if I am just muttering around with, let's move this one out of the way quickly. If I, am just muttering around with a brand new watercolor set, then I don't necessarily need to prep my pages for that, because all I'm doing is just putting down some watercolor paint, trying to see what it looks like mixed, experimenting with different things. Maybe it's my grocery list or things that I got new at an event or anything like that. This one was some things that I'd gotten at Art of the Carolinas last year, things like that. But there are sometimes certainly when I will prep it, but outside of that, if I'm just kind of goofing off with just randomly gluing things down, times like that I don't really necessarily prep my pages. There are other times, however, when I know that, like, see, for instance, here I was just gluing things down to clean off my desk. I don't necessarily have to prep this page in order to put color down or put watercolor or a little bit of acrylic or just randomly glue papers down. So for those instances, I will not prep the pages, but for like a finished production or a, if I'm just playing with a whole lot of acrylics, then yes, I will prep the pages. And you'll be able to see once you start working in it, what you need to prep and what you find would totally work without any type of prep. So thanks so much for prepping your journals with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.